I wasn't looking for anything when I downloaded the dating app. I had been single for over a year, and most of my weekends had started looking the same. I'd work until Friday afternoon, go home, order food, watch something, and then realize on Sunday night that I hadn't really talked to anyone all weekend. My friend Tyler kept telling me to try dating, so eventually I gave in. I matched with a woman named Lauren one Wednesday night. She was 30, lived somewhere on the side of town, and worked at a dental office. Her profile wasn't flashy. She had a picture with her dog, one at a lake and another where she was standing outside what looked like a bookstore. We started messaging. Got along pretty quickly. She had a sense of humor, which I liked, and she didn't send the usual long messages about wanting a perfect relationship after 3 conversations. For the few days it honestly felt like I was talking to a normal person. We met that Saturday at a diner I'd been going to for years. I picked the place because it was busy. I figured meeting someone for the first time in a crowded place made more sense than going somewhere quiet. Lauren arrived 15 minutes late and apologized 3 times for it. She said she'd driven past the entrance twice because the parking lot was confusing. We ordered breakfast, even though it was almost noon, and spent an hour talking. She asked what kind of work I did, whether I liked the neighborhood I lived in, and how long I'd been there. I told her I'd been in my apartment for 3 years. She asked if I lived alone. I said yes. At the time I didn't see anything about that. She also told me she had recently moved back to the area after living with her sister for a while, which explained why she didn't seem to know places around town. Before we left, she asked if I'd like to see her. I said yes. She gave me her number. The second date was at a Mexican restaurant on the other side of town. She was more relaxed that night. I remember thinking that maybe she had just been nervous the first time. We talked about things, made fun of each other's music choices, and spent almost 2 hours at the table. At one point she asked me what time I normally got home from work. I told her around 5:30. She asked if I usually came home. I said, usually. I'm not exactly living a life. She said she wasn't either. I didn't think about the conversation again until later. After dinner we sat in her car for a while because it had started raining. She told me she wasn't comfortable giving me her home address yet. I told her that was completely fine. Before I left, she kissed me on the cheek. Said she'd text me when she got home. The morning she sent me a picture of her coffee. Nothing unusual. We talked throughout the day, and around lunchtime she asked what I was doing. I told her I was at work. She replied, "Day?" I said yes. Then she wrote, "You'll be home around 6, right?" I stared at the message because I didn't remember telling her what time I'd be home that day. I asked her how she knew. She said I'd told her on the date. I went back through our messages. Couldn't find anything. I figured maybe I'd said it without remembering. I wasn't going to turn a thing into an argument, so I let it go. Days later something happened that bothered me more. I came home from work. Saw a white pickup parked across the street from my apartment. There were cars around, so it wasn't unusual by itself. What caught my attention was that the truck was still there when I left for work the morning. I looked through my window, saw a man sitting in the driver's seat. I couldn't see his face. When I came home that evening, the truck was gone. I mentioned it to Lauren during a phone call as a joke. She became quiet, asked what kind of truck it was. I told her. She asked if I had seen the driver. I said no. She changed the subject immediately. That should have been enough to make me slow down. I didn't. That's the part one still feels stupid about. When you like someone, you tend to explain away things that you probably wouldn't ignore if they involved a stranger. Lauren and I kept seeing each other. She was funny and sometimes surprisingly thoughtful. She remembered things I told her. She brought me the kind of coffee I liked. She sent me a picture of a jacket in a store. Asked whether I thought it would look good on her. I started feeling like we were becoming a couple. She also began asking personal questions. She wanted to know whether my parents lived nearby, whether I had any brothers or sisters, whether my neighbors were friendly, and whether my apartment building had cameras. I remember laughing when she asked about the cameras. I said, "Why do you care much about my building?" She said she was just curious. One Friday night, she came over to my neighborhood for the time. We had dinner at a restaurant a blocks away. When we finished, she said she wanted to see where I lived. We walked toward my apartment. I noticed she was looking around more than usual. She asked which building was mine. I pointed it out. She stopped walking. Said she wasn't feeling well. I asked if she wanted me to call her an Uber. She said no, she could drive herself. Then she hugged me. Walked back toward her car. I thought it was strange. I assumed she had changed her mind about coming upstairs. I didn't push it. The morning I woke up to a message from her. "Did you sleep okay?" I said yes. She replied, "Good. I was worried you might have heard something." I asked what she meant. She didn't answer for an hour. Then she said she'd been talking about the weather because there had been a storm overnight. I knew that wasn't what she meant. I didn't want to argue over a text message. That afternoon I went to the grocery store. When I came back, my apartment door was locked. Something felt wrong. I couldn't explain it at first. I unlocked the door. Walked inside. Nothing looked disturbed. My television was where I left it. My laptop was on the table. My bedroom looked normal. Then I noticed the kitchen cabinet was open. I always kept it closed. Inside was a box of photographs. The box had been moved to the front of the shelf. I called my landlord. He came over. Checked the lock. He said there was no sign of forced entry. I asked if maintenance had been inside. He said no. I told him about the photographs. He said maybe I'd moved them without remembering. I knew I hadn't. There wasn't much else I could do. That evening I told Lauren what happened. She didn't ask what had been taken. She asked, "Were the pictures there?" I said yes. She said, "That's good." I asked her why she cared about the pictures. She said, "I don't know. I just figured whoever went in might have wanted something." That answer made me uncomfortable. I asked, "How would you know someone went in?" She didn't respond. I called her twice. She didn't answer. An hour later she texted me and said she was tired and going to bed. I didn't reply. The day I called my friend Tyler and told him what had happened. He immediately asked me to send him Lauren's profile. I did. He searched for her on media and found an old account with a different last name. There were a few pictures, but one of them caught my attention. Lauren was standing beside a man outside a house. Tyler asked if I recognized him. I didn't. Then he noticed the date of the picture. It was from 2 years earlier. The day Lauren had told me she was living in another state. That was when I finally admitted to myself that I didn't really know who she was. I stopped answering her messages. She noticed immediately. For the 2 days she sent me texts asking if I'd lost interest. Then they became angry. Then apologetic. Then angry again. She said I was acting paranoid and that she'd done nothing. On the night I was sitting in my living room when someone knocked on my door. I looked through the peephole. It was the man from the picture. I didn't open the door. He stood there for 30 seconds, then looked directly at the peephole. I stepped backward. He said my name. Not loudly. Just enough for me to hear him. I didn't answer. He said, "I'm not here to hurt you." I stayed silent. Then he said something that made my stomach drop. "Lauren sent me." He walked away a seconds later. I called the police. Explained what happened. An officer came by, took a report, and checked the hallway cameras. The man had covered his face when he entered the building. They were able to track the vehicle he arrived in. It turned out the man was Lauren's boyfriend. According to him, he wasn't stalking her. He told the police Lauren had been using identities and had been getting close to men for money. He claimed she had been taking pictures of their homes, collecting information about their schedules, and sometimes copying documents. He said she had done it to him too. I didn't know what to believe. Then the police showed me something they'd found on a phone connected to Lauren. There were pictures of me. Not pictures I'd sent her. Pictures taken from outside my apartment building. One showed me carrying groceries. Another showed me getting into my car before work. There were dates and times written underneath them. The last picture had been taken the night Lauren. I had dinner near my apartment. Underneath it was a message. "He's alone. Apartment is easy to enter." I didn't sleep in my apartment again. Lauren disappeared before the police could find her. I changed my number, moved to another part of town, and deleted every dating app from my phone. I also stopped telling people where I lived until I knew them well. The strangest part is that I still remember our date pretty clearly. I remember the diner, the coffee, the way she laughed when I spilled ketchup on my shirt, and the stupid conversation we had about movies. None of it felt fake while it was happening. That's what makes the whole thing difficult to understand. People always say you should trust your instincts. The truth is that my instincts weren't screaming at me. They were whispering. A question that seemed a little personal. A car parked outside. A strange comment. A door that had been opened when it shouldn't have been. Every single thing had an explanation if you wanted one enough. I did. Because I liked her. That's probably the part I'll remember for the rest of my life. It wasn't the man at my door or the pictures on that phone. It was realizing that while I thought I was slowly getting to know someone, she had already been collecting information about me for weeks. I haven't used a dating app since. Maybe I will someday. But if I do, the first date will be somewhere public. I'll tell a friend where I'm going, and I won't give someone information about my home or daily routine, just because the conversation feels comfortable. Comfort isn't the thing as trust. I learned that won the way. I met Rachel through a dating app in the middle of winter. My friends had been telling me to get out, so I had been on the app for about 3 weeks. I was not really expecting much from it. Most conversations would die after a day or two, and the ones that did not usually turned into someone asking to move to Instagram. Rachel was different. We talked for a week before either of us mentioned meeting. She worked at a medical billing company, lived 20 minutes from me, and had recently gotten out of a long relationship. Her profile seemed normal. There were no pictures or weird quotes in her bio. She liked cooking, old movies, dogs, and going to flea markets on weekends. We eventually picked a coffee shop near a shopping center because neither of us wanted to make the first meeting complicated. I arrived early, sat in my car for a few minutes because I was not sure if I actually wanted to go in. Then Rachel walked past my car, looked through the window, and laughed because she had recognized me from my profile picture. That broke the tension quickly. The first date lasted an hour and a half. Rachel was quiet at first. Once she got comfortable, she talked a lot. She told me about her job, her sister, and a dog she had when she was younger. She asked about my family too. Nothing felt invasive. Before we left, she mentioned that she had noticed I lived near the north side of town because she had seen the location on my dating profile. I told her that was right, although I did not give her my address. She did not ask for it. We hugged goodbye. I figured that would probably be it. Then 20 minutes after I got home, she texted me and said she had a good time. We talked for another hour that night. She asked if I would be interested in getting dinner that week. I said yes. The second date was where things started feeling slightly different. We went to a restaurant she had chosen. It was a little more expensive than the places I normally went. Nothing crazy. Rachel seemed nervous that night. At one point, she dropped her fork, laughed about it, then apologized for being distracted. I asked if something was wrong. She said she had been having trouble sleeping lately. I did not ask more. During dinner, she asked whether I had ever had somebody become too attached to me. I thought she was asking because of something that had happened to her, so I told her about a girlfriend who had been difficult after we broke up. Rachel listened carefully, asked a few questions. Then she said, "People can hide a lot when you are first getting to know them." I remember that sentence because it sounded strange coming from her. I asked what she meant. She smiled and said she was talking about herself. She said she was not always easy to understand. We moved on. After dinner, she asked if I wanted to sit in her car for a minute. We talked there until midnight. She told me she had a phone which she used for work. I did not think much about that either. Before I got out of the car, she asked me not to mention her to people at work. I asked why I would. She said she had a life and liked keeping things separate. Again, it did not seem important. Days later, Rachel came to my apartment for the first time. I had invited her over because we were going to watch a movie. She did not stay long. She seemed uncomfortable the time. She kept looking around the apartment and asking questions about the building. She asked whether the neighbors were friendly, whether the building had cameras, and whether the front door stayed locked at night. I remember joking that she was acting like she was inspecting the place. She laughed. Then she asked me where my bedroom was. I pointed down the hallway. She looked at it for a second, then said she was tired. She left less than an hour later. The morning she sent me a message, saying she was sorry for leaving so suddenly. She said being inside someone's home made her anxious. I did not take it personally. In fact, I felt a little bad for making her uncomfortable. We kept talking. A week later, Rachel asked me if I still had pictures of my old girlfriend. I said I probably did somewhere on a hard drive. She asked if we were still in contact. I told her no. She asked whether my ex knew where I lived. I said probably. Rachel asked if she had ever shown up at my apartment. I said no. Then she wrote, "Okay. That's good." I asked why. She did not answer. I did not push it. Looking back, that was probably my mistake. A days later, I was at work when Rachel called me. She sounded upset. She asked if I had received anything in the mail that did not belong to me. I said no. She asked again seriously this time. I told her no. She said, "If you do not open it." I asked what she was talking about. She said she would explain later. That evening she came over. She looked tired, kept checking her phone. I asked her what was going on. She told me someone had been using her name to open accounts. She said she had reported it before. The person had somehow gotten access to some of her personal information. She thought it might be someone she used to know. I asked why that had anything to do with me. She said it did not. She wanted to make sure I was not getting dragged into it. I asked her how I could possibly be involved. She said, "Because they know who I'm seeing." That was the time I felt genuinely uncomfortable. I asked who they were. She said she did not know. Then she started crying. I did not know what to do. I made her some tea, sat across from her while she calmed down. Eventually, she told me she had been dealing with this for months. Someone had been contacting people around her, making them believe she was involved in things she was not. She said she had changed her phone number twice. She had moved apartments once. She had even changed jobs. I believed her. I should not have. I did. The next 2 weeks were strange. Rachel became more distant. Sometimes she would not answer my messages for a day, then she would call me late at night and talk for hours. She would say she was trying to get her life under control. I did not want to make things harder for her, so I gave her space. Then one afternoon I received a package. It was addressed to Rachel. There was no return address. I called her immediately. She told me not to open it. She came over 20 minutes later and took it from me. She looked at the label for a time before putting it in her bag. I asked what it was. She said, "Nothing." I asked why someone would send her something to my apartment. She said she did not know. That answer bothered me more than the package itself. After she left, I started thinking about all the things she had asked me. Where I worked, when I came home, whether my building had cameras, who had keys, whether my ex knew where I lived. At the time, each question had seemed separate. Put together, they did not feel separate anymore. I called my friend Daniel, told him I thought something was wrong. He asked me to show him Rachel's dating profile. I did. He noticed something I had not. Her account had been created 2 months earlier. That was not unusual by itself. Every picture she had uploaded had been taken within the same 3-week period. Daniel asked me to reverse search the pictures. We found one of them on a social media account belonging to a woman named Erica. The woman in the picture was Rachel. The account was almost 5 years old. The name was different. The city was different too. I confronted Rachel the day. She did not deny it. She just sat in my car, stared through the windshield. Her real name was not Rachel. She told me she had changed her name legally years earlier, but she did not want to tell me why. I asked whether she had been married. She said no. I asked whether she had been arrested. She said no. I asked if someone was actually following her. She said, "Not exactly." That answer made me really angry. I told Rachel I wanted her to get out of my car. Before Rachel did, Rachel looked at me, said, "I never meant for you to become part of it." I asked Rachel what it was. Rachel said nothing. Rachel got out. That night I changed the locks on my apartment. The morning I found out that Rachel had never worked for the company Rachel told me about. Daniel had looked it up. The company existed. Nobody with Rachel's name had ever worked there. I reported everything to the police. They were not able to tell me much. They did confirm that the name Rachel had used with me was connected to several old complaints. Nothing that immediately explained everything. Enough that they took the situation with Rachel seriously. Then something happened that I still cannot explain. 3 weeks after I stopped speaking to Rachel, I got a message from Rachel's number. It said, "I know you hate me. I am sorry." I did not respond. A second message came 10 minutes later. "Please do not let him find you." I stared at the screen. I had no idea who him was. I blocked the number. The morning I received another message from a completely different number. This one said, "Rachel is lying to you." That was it. No name. No explanation. I showed the messages to the police. There was not much they could do with them. I moved out of that apartment months later. Not because anyone had broken in. Because something dramatic happened. Nothing like that. I just did not feel comfortable there anymore. Every time somebody walked through the hallway, I wondered who it was. Every time my phone rang from a number, I thought about Rachel. I never found out the truth. I do not know whether Rachel was running from somebody, or whether Rachel had created the story herself. I do not know who sent the package. I do not know who sent those messages. I do not know whether the man Rachel warned me about even existed. The part that bothers me most is how ordinary the beginning was. If we had met somewhere and Rachel had immediately acted strange, I would have left. That is not what happened. We sat in a coffee shop. We talked about things. We laughed. Rachel told me about Rachel's dog. I told Rachel about my cooking. We had dinner. Spent an hour sitting in a parked car talking about movies. Nothing felt dangerous. Then little by little I realized that while I thought I was learning about Rachel, Rachel was learning about me. Once I understood that I could not remember which parts of our relationship had actually been about getting to know each other. That is the thing I still think about whenever someone tells me dating is harmless, because you can usually tell when somebody is weird. You cannot. Sometimes they do not look weird. Sometimes they are funny. Sometimes they are nervous. Sometimes they make you laugh. Sometimes the person sitting across from you is asking questions that do not seem important until you realize much later exactly why they wanted the answers.